finish up with this last Twitter sphere comment. League's Cup doesn't actually count because Liga MX. Yeah, go ahead. Tell him, Grace. Tell him, Grace. MLS is clear. Thank you, Grace.
Wise words.
League's Cup doesn't actually count as a real tournament because Liga MX had to play all their games away.
Yeah, that was one of the points that I kept alluding to earlier that I wanted to talk about. Does that invalidate the entire tournament? That would be insane to say. But to say that it has no effect, I think would kind of be a little, what's the right word? I guess like it'd be kind of ignorant to say that it had no effect. I mean, I think they had to do an excessive amount of travel, especially compared to a lot of the MLS sides. And I think it's something that they should look to implement in, I mean, even if as early as next year, if they can do it, or in hopefully somewhere in the short term in a couple of years, implement some games in Mexico, get some teams to travel down there, even if it's like two Mexico sides facing off against each other. And obviously, I don't know all the logistics behind everything here. And I'm sure that they had some kind of reasoning as to why every game was played. And I think every game was played in the US. But it definitely has an effect. I mean, I saw the tweets and stuff about teams being like stuck at airports and having to do all this traveling. And I guarantee you that has some effect, but it certainly does not invalidate the entire tournament.
So it was US and Canada. They played some games in Montreal and Vancouver and that. Here is my favorite part about this comment that basically is simping for Liga MX sides is usually made from USMNT stan accounts that were straight dunking on the Mexican national team like 3 months ago. Like you go from full support against any Mexican nationality player at all, and the second it becomes Mexico versus MLS and not just USMNT Euro based players, it's like, oh well, Liga MX had all these problems. We have to give them all the blah 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 blah. Did they do a lot of travel? Yes. Here is my big kicker with this. Every time an MLS side got knocked out early in a Champions League, and we said, yeah, that's usually what happens when a team from Liga MX who has unlimited spending is midway through their season, been training all month, goes up against a side that's played together for 2 weeks. You know what the answer always was? Tough. Too bad. All teams should be able to get up and play whenever they want, right? Usually from Liga MX fans or anti-MLS guys who want to see the leagues fail or whatever, right? The second it gets flipped and we're like, oh, well, yeah, Liga MX had to travel for 2 games in a row. And they had to do it, overnight for two group games. Everybody's like, oh, that's not fair. The tournament's rigged and it shouldn't count. And, all this stuff. It's not fair. And Liga MX deserves a fair shot and blah, 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 blah. Stop with the two-sided, argument. You can't have it both ways. You can't say that Liga MX gets a pass because MLS is in preseason, but the second MLS has a slight advantage in anything else, it's like the whole thing doesn't matter.
It's fair. That's a fair point to make out. Yeah, no, definitely. I think Champions League has always been a little bit of a disadvantage for us, just considering that teams are just starting their season. I think this is kind of a good reverse of that because I think the Liga MX season is still pretty. It's still
it's
pretty
like 4 games in.
Yeah, it's pretty early in their season as well. So it's a nice little like kind of reverse card on that one. You can get a little bit of a chance for MLS sides to kind of be in their regular season form at this point. I mean, I still would like to see games being played in Mexico as well. I think it would be ideal to get a little representation across the board. We have a couple games in Canada. I'm sure most of the games will still probably be in the US. But it would be nice to get a couple games in Mexico. I don't know how easy that would be with logistics. It's probably a lot easier said than done. But then at least you can I mean, yeah, I was just about to say, at least you can remove like any excuse that they can come up with, but there will always be an excuse. There will always be some reason as to why, if an MLS side does better, that it was rigged and, they got some unfair advantage. So,
And here's the thing, right? That's not bad. Having that like excuse game and Twitter exchange and fans going at it with each other, that's not bad, right? You're increasing engagement, you're getting people to actually watch, and if they're going to complain, they're going to complain, right? But that makes somebody who hasn't watched the league before be like, man, maybe I should take a look at this. And then they see something that Messi does and like, oh, I love it. Or they see something that Hani Mukhtar does and like, oh man, that guy's awesome. That's how my buddy, massive self-proclaimed, I think, Euro snob, big Barca guy, always took dumps on the league. Messi came over and he bought League's Pass. And then he started watching Nashville. He's like, bro, this Hani Mukhtar guy's a baller. I go, yeah, dude, he's great. And then he's like, dude, Lucia Costa's fantastic. But yeah, dude, he's great. Right? People will make excuse. The people who are the biggest outspoken critics of what we do never have watched a game in their life. Or if they did, it was 10 years ago. And we've had this conversation. The people who are actually willing to give it a chance are the ones that aren't tied to this ideology of like MLS has to die for everything else to be successful. That's a silly little thing. But no, the league set this up with the president of Liga MX or the president of the Mexican Federation. I don't know who really drove it. And they said, hey, we want to play all games in the United States. How do you feel? And they said yes. Why? Because there are more fans, more money revenue. They're getting profits at the tickets. They're getting merch sales. They're getting a percentage of all of it. And they know that they're making more money there than it is here. And that's important because it allows the game to grow. So is it a cash grab for owners? Maybe. But as long as they reinvest that, which most teams do, by the way, there are teams that won't, of course. But when the majority of teams do reinvest into their youth academies, into their stadiums, into their players, it grows the game. It makes things better. It allows us to do more things. You can complain all you want. It was a successful tournament. However,